This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. And welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard. It's a real honor to be with you today. We've got yet another great show in store for you today. We've got an action-packed show. We're going to have so much good information come out of this. We're going to learn about entrepreneurism. We're going to learn about overcoming adversity. We're going to learn about how different people do different things in different parts of the world that we can learn lessons from. And we're certainly going to be learning about talent and talent attraction and people and the people dynamics of the world today and how to deal with those and leverage those differently to help you in your business make sure that you thrive and you grow and you evolve and achieve the things you want to achieve, because we have to have people. People are the business. And so the better we can understand the dynamics of people today and manage and lead those, the better you're going to be. And so we've got a great person on the show today who's an entrepreneur. He's overcome a lot of adversity in his career, and he's gone on to, revolutionize the talent industry. And so today we have the privilege of having Kyle Mao on the show. What an incredible young man he is. He's a dynamic entrepreneur that went from being an engineer to a dating coach to co-founding an olive oil company overseas to following his passion for people. And he started a talent attraction agency called Hire UA. He's also a global blogger with over 1 million readers and subscribers. He is quite an inspirational young guy. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Thank you for having me on. That was quite an intro. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. You're quite the young guy. You've done a lot in your career. So, help the listeners and everybody, that tunes into the show get to know you a little bit better. How did you get to where you are today, and help us kind of catch up to speed with you right now?
Yeah, so my name is Kyle. I'm originally from California. I live out in Eastern Europe now, and I guess if you could really summarize me, I'm a guy who really likes business, and I kind of really believe that small, medium business owners, the people who are like the backbone of the economy, always seem to get the short end of the stick. And what I've done with my recent company is really try to fix that situation as best I can for those people. So, as you mentioned, I started off as an engineer in a corporate job, and then I moved to basically building my first business, a dating blog, then an olive oil company, and now the recruiting agency. So that's basically how I've spent the last roughly 10 years of my life. And it's had a lot of ups and downs. And honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Now that's an interesting journey because there's some unexpected things mixed in there. Typical profile of an engineer is not a dating expert, right? Like
Correct.
engineers are kind of more introverted, very intellectual, very smart people. Not typically the best at all the people skills. They're very analytical and logical thinkers. How in the world did you just get into the dating scene, and with blogs and helping people in the dating world from being an engineer? That's non-typical.
Because I was a typical engineer who wasn't very good at any of that. So then I started looking for, late bloomer, you could say, definitely a late
Okay.
bloomer. And so I started trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life if I, ever wanted to actually have some success in the dating world. And I stumbled upon some information and started to kind of be able to change that part of my life. And then I said, well, maybe there's some other people that would take value from hearing what I'm doing. So I started an anonymous blog. Nobody didn't have my face on it for many, many years. And before I knew it, it was kind of a little side business, and it was growing in readership to the point it was doing over 1 million readers a year. And trust me, like when I first started that, I never ever thought it would actually be the launching pad to my first, entrepreneur journey and first one in my family really to do it, and then actually moving abroad to Europe. So obviously it was not what I expected at all, but it was, like you said, an interesting path. But that's kind of how it started. Was I actually was the typical engineer who was really really poor with girls.
I love it. So you learned some lessons yourself through, being a single guy and getting out there, figuring out life as a young person and dating and meeting people. And you learned some lessons, you package those lessons and offered them up to other people, and people gravitated to them. And I bet you received quite a bit of feedback from people like, "Hey, thanks, that was a great tip," or "Hey, that helped me from making a mistake," or something. I bet you got a lot of positive feedback from people. Give us an example of how you help somebody in that space.
I mean, I've actually been stopped on the street in Europe probably 10, maybe 12 times in the last 5 years of people like, "Hey, are you Kyle? Like, I've read your blog for a long time and you really, taught me this or whatever." So that has always been a little bit weird for me because I think like if you're actually a celebrity, you kind of get used to that. But when you're just walking down the street, minding your own business, going home from dinner, going home from the gym, and someone runs up to you, jumps in front of you, and stops you and knows tons about you and you have no idea who they are, it's a little weird the first few times. So those would be the stories of I've actually been stopped in Ukraine and Poland and the Czech Republic, and that's probably it actually. But yeah, it's always interesting to meet those readers for sure.
That is incredible, man. And that I think that's just a testament to the kind of person you are and the impact that you're making out there, because everybody struggles with things in life, whether it's their personal life or, things in business, trying to figure out how to deal with business challenges if they're a business owner, or how to, climb the corporate ladder if they're, an employee. And so that's powerful. I mean, people to recognize you and approach you and give you that kind of feedback is powerful. So you mentioned Europe, like you're in Europe now. There was a point where you transitioned from California here in the United States to Eastern Europe. So what brought you to Europe? What made you want to move there and kind of live your life there?
Honestly, it was just a matter of I took my first trip out here and I actually just really, really vibed with the place. And then I kind of started looking around saying, okay, maybe my business it's a little side hustle now, but maybe it could become something more. But at the time I was living in Los Angeles where my rent was $2,000 a month. The car payment with insurance, gas, everything else probably took me up another 700 bucks. And I mean, I was making good money for a 22, 24-year old. I was making almost 100K a year, but I wasn't taking home very much. And I kind of realized the business, I'm never going to be able to grow it if I'm here and my cost of living is basically everything that I'm making. So it was
Yeah,
an option to say, okay, if I go to Europe and I move, to Eastern Europe, I can probably live for $1,500 a month if I'm careful. This was back in 2016. And I kind of just told myself, if I don't figure out how to make a business work in the next year and a half when I run out of money, then I didn't deserve to make it in the first place. So that is what I did is I saved about $20,000 and I said, okay, we got a year and a half to make this happen. And thankfully it did happen. But that was pretty much why it started. A desire for adventure, being young, being single, and then just also wanted to cut my cost of living and give myself a chance at business.
man, that takes a lot of courage. Not anybody can just pick up, move to a foreign country, and really trust that it's going to work out and really do it. Tell me about your mindset and your process of your thinking there, to where you got confident enough to take that big of a risk and move to a foreign country and live in a different culture. And like, I mean, that's a massive change in your life, your personal life to how you're living, where you're living, the culture around you, and finding work and figuring out how to make a living. Like what happened to like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and I've mitigated the risks and I've thought through this. Like, talk us through that a little bit.
I think it was just that I knew I was good at my corporate job and I knew I could go back to it if I needed because I was already, 24 and I was already a senior level person. So I knew that if I failed, I could always go get a job. That was kind of my attitude. And I think at the time I was thirsty for adventure. I just wanted to go do something different. I wanted to step out of my comfort zone. I look at it now. I'm 32. I have an almost 2-year-old child. Could I take that same leap, that same risk? It would be a quite a bit more of a thought process now to do something like that. So I think it was just perfect circumstances. A little bit disillusioned with America for a variety of reasons, wanting to cut my cost of living, being young, wanting the adventure, and having a desire to build a business too. So I really didn't think too much about that. All the things that you just mentioned, I think I was so excited to go. I wasn't sitting there thinking like, oh, this is so risky or what's going to happen. I just said, this is what I want to do. And I still remember that phone call to my parents. It was, I think, December 17th. And I was going home for the holidays in like 5 days. And I basically got on the phone, said, okay, mom, dad, I want to talk to both of you on speakerphone. Got on the phone, said, so I'm going to be quitting my corporate job I said like February. I would like to move back home with you guys for 6 weeks and get my bearings. And then I'm booking a one-way flight to Europe. I'm not going to talk about this now, but when I get home in 5 days, you can ask me any question you want. I'll be happy to discuss it all with you. And that was how I left it. And they're like, okay. I said, okay, see you in a couple days. And that was about it.
Well, that's one way to warm them up. Yeah.
'Cause I knew they were gonna be like, "Ooh." Yeah, I knew they were gonna be a little surprised, so I didn't wanna deal with the emotional reaction right away, but to their credit, there was none, they were fully supportive.
So I think there's some really powerful lessons, for folks out there that are, trying to figure out their way or stuck somewhere in life. One, do your homework. Two, have a plan. Just think through things. Know what you want, and then make that decision. Right? Like you can do anything in life you want to do. You just have to wake up and decide to do it, and then you
Mhm,
have to accept the fact that you've got to do what it takes to do it. So I love the fact that you kind of you woke up and you said, "I'm just going to do this. This life I'm living in California is nice. It's good, but it's not great. It's not everything I've defined in my ideal life, and I'm going to, do something different to improve that and to live, a better life, a more quality life, or whatever you were defining is better for you, and you decided to do it. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to figure it out, and you took it one step at a time and let one thing happen that led to another thing, and it also kind of put some pressure on you to actually
mhm.
go do it.
Yeah, I think if I had come with like multiple years of savings, I probably would have sat around and procrastinated for a couple years. And
Yeah.
I met some people who were in similar situations, and instead of maybe having 20 grand, they might have had 70, and then they just had no sense of urgency. 3 years later, they were still like, "Oh, I'm going to start something," and traveling around, having fun, partying, and they never actually did, and they ended up having to go back to the corporate life. So I think that was a good perfect storm for me that I didn't actually have a ton of money in the bank. I think if I had had double or triple, then I would have good chance I might not have made it actually.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Very good point. I remember a time in my life when it was time. I came to a kind of a crossroads, and it was time. Like either you're going to take the leap, and you're going to go off and do the next great thing that was in store for me, or I was just going to stay where I was at and kind of ride that wave. And it was kind of a do or die moment, and it was like, you know what, everything's on the line. This is the opportunity may not come back again. It may not, you don't know. And I had $5,000 in my pocket. I'm like, well, I'm going to move from, this was, Texas back to the East Coast,
Mhm.
and there were sacrifices that were made. I lived a very humble and basic life, with not a lot of income, and I was happy during that time, and I was building in that time and investing in that time, and then that those 2 years and that transition catapulted me to this next level, and without that, then I might not have ever, made that leap and achieved that next thing. And then from that platform that I had, elevated to, that, gave me the path to go, do even bigger things, right? Where one
Mhm.
door opens, you walk through it, and then you're exposed to some other doors you didn't even know existed, and those can take you in directions that you never even maybe even thought of. So awesome, man! I love that story. So you're over in Europe. As I was reading some information about you, you decided to open a olive oil company, not just any olive oil company, like a very robust, productive, thriving olive oil company, like one of the bigger ones in Europe. How in the world did you get into olive oil? Like that's like dating, engineering, and then like the food industry. Like how did that happen?
It was a reader of that blog who I became friends with, and
Okay.
he was of Croatian descent. We were living in Prague, Czech Republic, and we became friends. And it was just one of those situations. He said, "Hey, I've got, my grandparents have this farm they've been building on for the last however many years, and we've got the oil. I'd like to bring it. I could use someone to help, get it off the ground and market it." And so that was kind of how it got started. And it was just one of those situations, right place, the right time, the right business before at the right time, the right guy at the right time. So it all just kind of added up. And I always say that everything in my entrepreneur career has just stacked on itself. Like every skill I built at every company I've done or every project I've done is always just building and building and building to the point there, I just know a lot of things about a lot of different things. And then, of course, when
Yeah.
something comes up in the current business, I have at least an idea of where to go to solve it to begin with. So that was how it started, was just knowing the right person who came from the first business.
Now that is interesting. I mean, that kind of emphasizes, where one door opens, many other doors open you don't even know about, right? So
Mhm.
if you never face some things in your personal life and dating and meeting people, and never started the blog, never connected with people out there, you probably wouldn't have that company. You probably wouldn't be
No.
where you are today with that, right?
No, correct. No way. And that company obviously gave me a certain amount of clout, you could say, someone who
Yeah,
built a company like that. And that makes everything else easier when you can go to people and be like, oh yeah, this is something that I did and it's an actual physical product and it's cool. So yeah, like I said, everything has just stacked on itself. I have people, for
yeah,
example, like fitness influencers who we sent that oil to and said, could you review it? And those guys now have hired from my hiring agency. So it's, the longer you're in business, the more people you know, the more you network, and it all just kind of continues to build off of itself. But it's about getting that initial momentum is by far the hardest part, is getting the boulder to move. Once the boulder's rolling down the hill, it's really not that hard to keep it rolling, but getting it to actually
yep.
start, really, really tough.
Man, and so you talked about your hiring agency, Hire UA.
Mhm.
When did you start that firm? What led you from blogging to the dating, the blogging to this olive oil opportunity to talent and people and attraction and retention and all that? How did all that start? When did that start?
So that was really because I was living in Ukraine. So at that point, that had become my permanent home by 2019, 2020. I'd bought property there, I'd gotten married, and then I had hired an assistant on the ground in Ukraine to help me out with various tasks, documents, translating, errands, etc. And then I had been working online with virtual assistants from other countries, but she was just really good. And I kind of said, she's not that much more expensive than pretty much all the other ones, but I think she's quite a bit more talented and maybe a little bit more hungry, a little bit more versatile. And so that kind of planted a seed in my head. And then I had a couple friends also from various online businesses, like a couple guys who owned e-commerce stores. And they, had heard about that I'd found someone to be my assistant. They said, hey, like, could you guys like find us a customer support rep when we would be willing to try this? We've mostly hired from the Philippines before, but we would take a try at this. And before you know it, we'd had a couple more successes and they were willing to do a testimonial. And I said, we might actually have something here. So then it became, an actual business and started actually advertising it a little bit. And then it kind of just grew up from there.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about Hire UA. What does UA stand for? What tell us about the company and the name and
Yeah.
what all you do or and not do.
So higher UA is short for Ukraine. So obviously, like I said, I was living there. That was very much my home base for a lot of years before the war kicked off. And our goal is to put talent, primarily Ukrainians, but also other places in Eastern Europe, into Western businesses and help the small and medium business owners in the States who I think are just constantly getting screwed by unable to find the right talent that doesn't want to work, taxes, regulations. I think there's quite a few problems, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. Of it's really tough these days for a American business owner to actually get the help you need. So our goal is to basically help those business owners while also helping people in Ukraine and the surrounding countries have good opportunities, and ideally everybody wins. Business owner gets great help at a great price, they get a great opportunity for their life.
Yeah. Now, why did you focus on Ukraine right out the gate? Was there a special kind of connection to Ukraine, or just the people were a certain type of people that you felt, would be great employees for people in different parts of the world? Or what was it about Ukraine specifically?
It was one because I was living there and married to one, so being on the ground there made all the sense in the world to actually start with
Right.
that. But it was also the prices were a little bit cheaper than elsewhere in Eastern Europe. There was a the tide was rising, you could say, before the war. Lots of foreign investment, hundreds, if
Yeah.
not thousands, of apartment buildings going up, brand new. More and more people speaking English, more and more Western restaurants opening up. So it felt like a rising tide. And then the younger generation in Ukraine, a lot of their parents grew up under very poor times with the Soviet Union and communism, and Ukraine was very much still under that umbrella of Russia until the last few years, really, more so than other countries in this region like Poland or the Czech Republic that joined the European Union. So it was just a combination of all those things. Excited people, good price, rising tide, getting more westernized, and ability too. Obviously, just extremely bright people. So all of those
Yeah.
things, plus me being on the ground, made it pretty obvious, easy decision to say,
Yeah.
okay, this is where we're going to start.
Yeah. Yeah. They're amazing people. They're very, just rich in culture and
Mhm.
just amazing people there. I've hired people from Ukraine and just different parts of the world around there in some of the global companies that I've run, and always pleased with hardworking people, very caring. They take a lot of pride in what they do, and they do a great job. They just are yearning for opportunity, and very thankful, very humble people, from the folks that I've got an opportunity to get to know. So then the war kicks off. Russia invades, and bullets start flying. And how did that change things for you and some of the things you were doing there?
Obviously, at that very moment, everything was just in chaos. We didn't know if the people we'd placed were working. We didn't hear from some of them, so we had no idea. All of our clients that had people actively placed in their business were obviously texting us saying, "Hey, what's going on?" We're willing to give them as much time as they need, but it can't be indefinite necessarily. So it
Yeah,
was really just a matter of, I mean, getting myself out of Ukraine, getting my family out of Ukraine, trying to figure out where on earth we were going to live after that, while trying to keep the business afloat, make sure my employees were okay, make sure all the people we'd placed were okay. It was just crazy. And then after that, it became a little bit like we had it. I hate to say it, but it helped in a way at the business because there was so much awareness on Ukraine that everybody was like, okay, yeah, I really actually would like to hire somebody now to help. So that was maybe
yeah.
the one benefit out of that, and I mean, I hate saying that, that's just the truth, but since then, I mean, we've just absolutely gone catastrophic with the growth. We had a different name previously, and then, rebranded the company, said, "Hey, we're all, people like our entire company is all Ukrainians, replacing mostly Ukrainians, like, that's our base, so let's call it Higher UA," and it really just took off from there. Now we've helped hundreds of businesses and hundreds of people in Ukraine, and it's like I said, we're the goal is to make sure that everybody's happy and everybody wins.
Well, from being in the military myself, I've been in a number of war torn countries, and have fought many battles on many fronts. And I can personally speak to the fact that that is a very tragic situation. There's just massive crimes against humanity, mistreatment of people.
Yeah,
The Ukrainians have just gone through absolute hell,
well said.
unfortunately, and I just it's sad. It's just an unfortunate thing. It seems like things are starting to turn around. Hopefully, that continues to the war and the efforts dissolve and eventually are over. I don't think we're there yet, but I think things are de-escalating. We're starting to go in the right direction if we can keep that going. So these people can rebuild and put their lives back together. There's so much sadness and loss, and so yeah, and I think I know people around the world, especially here in America, we're obviously sympathetic to that. We support them. We've provided them a lot of military and foreign aid and food and supplies, and I know other countries have too. Horrible thing to go through, but where every bad thing that happens in the world, Kyle, from what I've seen, there's always opportunity in those things as well, right? It
Very true.
tragedy can breed opportunity, and yeah, you never want to like relish and somebody people dying to create opportunity. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying there is opportunity in everything, and I think shining a light on that part of the world and those good people that want to contribute to a better life and for people that don't know much about Ukraine and those Eastern Bloc countries, there are a lot of really good people there. And like I said before, in my
Mhm.
past experiences, I've had a opportunity, and I still keep in touch with some of those people today, even though they don't work for me anymore. Loved it. They did excellent work. Take a lot of pride in that. And so you moved your family,
Yep.
and there's a lot of emphasis, obviously, on Ukraine. People wanted to, help and serve. And so, how did you shift the company? How did you transition out of that to where we are today with all of that?
So at the time when the war first kicked off, it was just me and two other employees at that point. And then that was February 2022. August 2022, I hired my third person for the company. And now we're up to almost 20 about, year and a half later. So since that point,
Wow.
it's really exploded. We have a full marketing department, sales department, fulfillment, recruitment department. And I'm just so proud of them and so impressed that I've hired some good people, but they've continued to hire below them to the point now where I'm really, really removed from a lot of the day to day, and I don't really have that much to do. I get to focus on the bigger stuff in the business instead of kind of just going through the trenches, so to speak. And so they've just
Yeah.
done an amazing job. And everything that you said about just how sharp and bright they are and how you've enjoyed your interactions with them, I couldn't say enough good things as well about the team at Hire UA. And I obviously everything that you've said, I've lived through it too, and I've seen it myself. So yeah.
Awesome. Now, talk to us a little bit about the kind of people you're recruiting for. Is there a certain kind of industry or certain type of group, technology to manufacturing? Like, do you focus in certain areas or not?
I would say, I mean, honestly, we'll serve just about anybody depending on what your position is. We really like a lot of the kind of digital spaces, like digital agencies, but we've done HVAC companies. We have a great client who's a tire distributor in Florida. We've done, supplement companies. We've done anesthesiologists. So we've really just whatever somebody needs, we're able to find in a lot of cases. And like I said, that's a testament to the team and the work that they do, and just having a good hungry workforce out here that's very talented, that's just eager
Yeah.
to have an opportunity.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Talk to us about some of the trends you're seeing. Are people in other places like America or Canada or Mexico or South America or just different parts of the world, even Asia, are are they thinking globally enough? Are they looking broad enough into these countries? Are more and more people looking to you or others to find people in these parts of the world? Like, how do you feel kind of strategically? The overall economy is evolving with talent and where the talent is and how to get to them and
I think there's a huge gap. So there's either like you're
okay.
all in and your business is capable of being fully remote, but there's a lot of businesses, I think, especially in America, that are still only looking locally. And if they really thought about it, they probably could take a lot of their operation overseas, but they're kind of clinging on to the past. So I think, the people who are running marketing agencies or legion agencies, that kind of space, they're all in on, remote work. But there's a lot of local service businesses who, for example, let's say you're a plumber and you're still managing your own phone. Why are you doing that when you could have an assistant who speaks fluent English and knows the industry, who could be answering the phone, doing all your appointments and handling all your scheduling and admin work for $2,000 a month? Like, to me, that's a good example of, those type of industries that really the door's not even open yet for them, and they don't even realize it because they may still be using pen and paper to keep track of everything.
Yeah. Now, talk about some of the fears, some of the anxieties, and maybe objections of hesitations people may have about hiring remote people that have never hired them before, people that are overseas, and because you can't see them, touch them, they're on a different time zone, and all of these types of sometimes excuses. What are the top things you're seeing of why people are struggling to venture into this direction?
The first one is always, do they have an accent and are they presentable? Which to me is very easily
Mm,
solvable. You get on a call with them and you can see that they're presentable and that their accent is perfectly fine for whatever role you need. I would say the next one is just an understanding of how to communicate. So when you can't just walk to the next office over and talk to somebody, how often should I check in with them? And to me, that's very simple. Once you've gotten through it a few times and you've done it, you realize, we should meet every day starting out, and then it can become 3 times a week, and I need to provide training. So you get used to that as well. And then the third factor is usually trust. Like, can I trust this person? What if they do this? What if they do that? And I kind of just say, it's really not any different than hiring locally. At the end of the day, if someone does something that costs you money to actually go and say sue the person in the US, is that worth your time? Is that worth the money? Even if you win, are you actually going to be able to go collect that? So I think the whole kind of trusting thing is a little bit overstated. I think people worry about that a little too much. And I think oftentimes it's maybe they're just comfortable doing it themselves and they don't necessarily want to let go, or they don't know how to let go, or even what they should let go of. And it's all these factors that kind of breeds this uncertainty that leads to people kind of continuing to do it themselves. And in many ways, I think that's really sad, because you don't want to be running a business like when you're in your 60s and 70s and having to work 15-hour days. You want to be sipping a margarita on the beach at that point, I would think. So, being able to take things off your plate is and delegate to good people is really, really powerful as your business grows and as you get older.
yeah, it's always 5 o'clock somewhere, and everybody always likes to eat and drink and enjoy life. So, anytime you can put yourself in a position to enjoy life more than the business owning you, I highly recommend you think about your options there and why you're doing what you're doing, and is your mindset really right?
Hmm.
So, from my vantage point as a global business and executive coach, I coach people all over, and I see these similar types of, things as well, mindsets of people. And I can't talk to them, and then there are different time zones, and I hear all the same excuses that I think you do. But at the end of the day, I think it boils down to one simple thing: the it's your ability to lead and influence people. And if you can only lead and influence people when you can physically see them in the office every day, and you can't lead and influence people in any other way, then are you really truly a leader? Are you a big enough leader? Do you have enough leadership development in you to be a competitive leader of a competitive company that's competing in a global economy that's changing rapidly? More change is going to happen in the next 15 years than than the past 150 years combined. So, I would challenge people that are listening to the show or even not listening to the show, that are you positioning yourself and your business to be delivering the best services possible? Are
Hmm.
you evaluating all of your options for resources for solving all the problems that you need to solve? Are you doing the things you need to be doing to be as competitive as you need to be? And are you elevating and broadening out your leadership to be able to do that. Because, yes, there is a lot of great talent in the world. There's a lot of great talent that wants to work for good companies that want to make an impact in the world and do good things in
Mhm.
Ukraine, in Europe, in Asia, and everywhere. There's talent everywhere, especially in Eastern Europe right now.
Question for you. So you said something really interesting, which is that are you enough of a leader if you can't influence people without being in the office with them? Do you think that is just a matter of wanting to micromanage because you can just go look over their shoulder? And you think that maybe you see, like with your, who you work with, that they just, the remote is too far away from that and too far removed where they can't be close enough to actually observe and be in someone's face about it? Do you think that's kind of the issue?
I think it's very simple. I think it's about control.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I was gonna go there next, but yeah.
People feeling they have control if they can see people. Now, I am all about people working together in a collaborative manner. And there are times and situations and businesses and business models where you need to be in person and there's no other way around it. Like you have to be in an office, you have to be in the warehouse, you have to be physically in a space working with other people. And I wholeheartedly believe the best way to work together is in a very collaborative space. And I believe, either face to face communication that can be physically in the same space, or it can be online like we are right now. Like there's no difference in me and you having a conversation about business on a video call than if somebody was sitting right in front of me face to face. Like there's no difference there, right? So I think it's about control and the leader feeling like they're in control. This is really a transition of, is it all about me as the leader and what I like and what I think and what makes me feel good and make what
Mhm.
makes me feel comfortable, or is this in the long-term best interest of the organization? And if you're
Yeah.
clinging to things and holding on to things because it's more centered around you as the leader, then I would ask you to look in the mirror and answer the question, are you a big enough leader to move your company forward? And what needs to happen to make that happen? And I will tell you, my personal testimony, I have led large organizations globally multiple times. And I have hired people in the Ukraine, Croatia, and Siberia, and all over the world, even South America, even Asia, even the Philippines, even India. I have hired people and had these people working globally 24/7 and ran successful organizations. You just have to be able to adapt your leadership to the needs of those people and set those expectations and set the cadence of how you do things and communicate differently. It is different than, it's real convenient to walk up and down the halls and pop in somebody's office every 10 feet and say, hey, how's it going, what are you doing, how's your
Mhm.
dog doing, how's your kid doing, and that's great, but the world's moving too fast for you to think in these old school manners. You've got to think about diversity. You've got to think about um, all of your options in the world today in this global economy to move your business forward in the way that you need to move it forward.
Very well said. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, honestly. It's just the old school way, like you said. And I think the big thing is that, you know, being in the office 5 days a week for the best people, they have better options than that now. Plain and simple. Like
Yep.
someone who's an A player has offers to only have to go to the office 1 day a week. So if you're insisting on 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, like you said, the world's changing. You might have to adjust.
Yep. I'll say it like the Alabama coach Nick Saban said when he deals with people on his team. They're national championship contenders year after year after year, and that's
Hmm.
not by accident, right? It's because they have high standards and expectations, right? So they bring in a game players, high achievers. High achievers don't work well with lower achievers, and lower achievers don't work well with higher achievers. And so the question to you as the audience here is, what kind of team do you have? Do you have A players? Do you have B players, C players? Whatever you have is what you have, but you gotta have the right
Makeup, team composition.
makeup of these people to work and get the best out of them, for your interest in getting things done in your company, but their interest in growing and developing them, and so their careers can thrive as well. So Kyle, let's shift gears. How do you do what you do in Hire UA? What kind of process? If I'm a business owner and I have needs to fill through highly qualified people, and I know you, I'm going to go to you. I'm like, Kyle, I need X, Y, and Z employees to do X, Y, and Z things. Like, what is my experience going to be like? How does that work? Walk us through that a little bit.
Generally speaking, if you already have an idea of what you're looking for and we can fill it within the budget, you're going to be presented candidates and scheduled interviews within 5 days of starting with us. And I'm not joking about that, 5 days. It just depends on exactly what the role is, how specific it is. And sometimes, depending on the size of the company, we're going to ask some questions. So if it's someone who's kind of a new business owner and maybe they've got 3 people or less, I'm going to say, like, have you audited your time? Have you looked at it? Like, what do you actually want to take off your plate? If it's a bigger organization, kind of what I think you're attesting to, you already know what it is. You've already probably got people in that role. So in that case, it's kind of full steam ahead. But sometimes I think it's important that you take a step back and really say, like, okay, this is what I want to take off my plate. This is how much time it's taking. And you've got to actually look at what you're doing and what you like doing and what you hate doing and make sure that you're removing the correct thing instead of just saying, I need someone to do this.
Gotcha. Now I know a little bit about your company, and so one of the things that you offer that I think is different than other people, your ability to save them on average 70 to 80% in cost within about a 5 to 10 day period. What does that mean, and how do you do that? How do you entice a guy like me to take advantage of that opportunity?
I mean, it's really as simple as if you're going to pay, say, a project manager in the US $100,000 a year, you're going to be paying roughly 20 ish from Eastern Europe. It's that big of a pay difference. But here's the thing, the cost of living here, they're actually living similar quality of life, I would say, on that 20,000 that you would be making
Hmm.
100K in the States. So it's huge gap there. I mean, that right there is obviously a huge enticement, I would say, in many cases. In addition to that, obviously, if you haven't hired before, that headache of putting the job description out there, filtering the candidates, scheduling and conducting the interviews, it really is quite a time sink. So being able to just say, here's what I need, here's the calendar link, schedule it, and have that all just taken off your plate is obviously a huge enticement as well. And then, of course, just being able to have somebody who, will replace at any point if needed to prevent that churn, or at least make sure if you do churn that we have someone ready for you. I think those three factors are all huge in, getting a Western business owner from the States or somewhere else to be interested in that.
Well, I'm going to help Kyle out even more here because, again, I've hired people in these ways, and the cost of living is cheaper in these parts of the world. And I would pay people $30 an hour. That would something that would cost me, double or triple that here in the United States.
Hmm.
And at $30 an hour in certain parts of Europe that we're talking about, that put people in the top 5%, 5 to 10% of the wage earners in that part of the world. So they're able to live in the nicer houses and the nicer neighborhoods, and their kids go to the nicer schools and they drive the nicer car. Like that put them in the top echelon. And so, I never worried about losing those people as I did about people in America
Hmm.
because they were very loyal.
To kind of illustrate your point there too, so I live in Poland, and with a family, young child and a dog, I can't spend more than $4,000 a month, and that's with rent. That's 2,500 a month because it's a really really
Yeah.
nice brand new place, and I physically cannot spend more than that, and that's going out to eat. That's really not being frugal at all, and that's a cost of living here, and it can be a lot lower than that too. If we didn't have such a big apartment and circumstances were
Yeah.
a little different, we could easily get by on 2,000. So yeah, when you're going to pay someone that per month, they're living a pretty good life.
Yeah, I remember a guy that worked for me he was in Croatia
Hmm.
at the time. This is a number of years ago, and he had a nice, looked like a condo or something. It was like a nice. He was lived right on the beach. It was beautiful views of the Mediterranean. I mean, this was like, like some kind of a dream place you go on vacation or something, where you're right on the beach and it was beautiful. And he lived an amazing life. And, for relatively, compared to the United States, a lot lower. And he loved it. He loved
Hmm.
working with us. I mean, we sent him shirts and hats and keychains and all the stuff that the company branded stuff. And I mean, we even though they were overseas and they weren't W-2 employees, we leveraged them in a 1099 manner. You
Hmm.
can do both, um, but man, they loved that situation and they were so loyal, so thankful, and it was amazing. He did great work,
Hmm.
great work. So highly recommend that. So Kyle's we're kind of wrapping up the show here. Obviously, we've highlighted, there's a lot of talent out there that's untapped, a lot of talent
Hmm.
available that's good, qualified, educated, speaks English, in different parts of the world that we should, potentially consider and in this global competitive economy. And so thank you for sharing that story. I think it's going to be very enlightening for a lot of people. I think obviously you're an inspirational guy. As we leave the show, what are some parting thoughts you'd like to share that you think people would get the most value from you?
I think we talked a little bit about this before we kind of went on the air. And I think that the big thing is that in business and entrepreneurship, there's just a lot of hurdles, and you're going to have ups and you're going to have downs. And that's kind of just part of the game. And the more storms that you weather, the smaller they seem. There's just another storm that's going to come eventually. So there's a good quote from, I'm an avid cyclist, and there's a quote, I think it was from, I forgot who it was. I think Sean Kelly. And he said, "It never gets easier. You just go faster." So it's still going to hurt to ride the bike
Huh.
up the giant mountain. You're just going to do it faster. And I think business is the same way. You've always got to expect those hurdles and those bumps. But as you keep going, the previous bumps seem very small in comparison. And the problems I deal with now, I look back at what I used to deal with. I say, oh, wow, what I was dealing with 5 years ago in my business is a lot simpler than these days. So just keep going. Usually the world has a way of making things work out if you just put the time in.
Excellent advice. I love it. I love the quote too. That's really cool.
Yeah, I like that one. It's apt.
Yeah, that's really cool, and what a great place to cycle too. That's such beautiful country over there.
It is. Yeah,
I'm envious. I wish I could go back to Europe. We talk about it all the time. Well, folks, we're kind of drawing near here. I think from my vantage point, there's some really important takeaways. One, don't settle. Don't just live in mediocrity. God's given you talents and abilities and skills to go out into this world to do great things. And if you're not going out there and maximizing that potential, take lessons from Kyle today and his journey from starting, working a day job as an engineer to taking chances, following your heart, and really understanding what your passions and what you're really, really good at, and allowing a door to be open for you. Because as Kyle demonstrated in his personal life, where one door opened, numerous doors, opened thereafter that took him places he didn't even think he could be. And I think that's a great lesson in life for us to think about and challenge ourselves and look in the mirror and really push ourselves and trust ourselves to be the best that we can be. I think, Kyle also, talked about the landscape of people and talent and where good talent is in the world that we might not be thinking about, and challenged our thinking about how to engage different talent in different ways. And Kyle has a great company, Hire UA, that helps people figure that out, helps them transition into different ways of bringing different people into the team that can be huge value add and help your company grow and achieve great things. And so, Kyle, appreciate you being on the show. You're an
Likewise.
inspiration, I think, for everybody. And so that's it for today's show. We've got another great show in store for you next week. You don't want to miss it. I'm going to leave you in suspense and say it's definitely one you don't want to miss. It's going to be an extra special show. So hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time.